Good morning, everybody. So my husband brought up to me that I have not done a devotional in a while, and I was like, man, I really haven't. And you know, what I've got for you guys today is nothing groundbreaking. It's nothing, I guess, special, but it's just what I've been studying on here lately, and I thought I'd get on here and share. Hopefully it will stay a little quiet for this video. My kids are outside playing, and it's a beautiful, warm, sunny day. I gotta love this warm weather. It's so nice, and they love it too. But I have a window right here, so I can see them, and I can do this, so they're good. We don't live in like a city area or anything like that. We are out in the country out here, and we have neighbors, but we know all of them, and there's not a lot of traffic. They're good. But yeah, but I can see them. One of them is in the Cozy Coupe car. One keeps trying to pull the little gas nozzle for the fake, toy gas tank or whatever. Another one is on a tricycle. They're good. But anyway, what I've been studying on here lately is how not to be an Eve wife. Eve, Adam and Eve, mother of us all. I was thinking about how me and my husband were going through something, and it was kind of my fault because I took a temptation that was something that was against our standards. That was just, it's not like awful, but it's just something that we just don't partake in anymore. And I felt a desire for it. I felt a pull, and I partook in it. And, my husband, saw that, and he didn't judge me in it, but I put that temptation in his face, and then he started doing it, and it just kind of, it wasn't, I guess, bad, but it was bad for us because it was just something we choose not to do, and not to partake in, and it started to kill us spiritually. So we had to get that out of our lives again and pray and seek the Lord's forgiveness. And, it kind of came in my mind. I'm like, man, I'm just like Eve. I'm like, she gave that apple to her husband. She knew better. And, she knew she done wrong. But, she gave it to him anyway. She put that temptation in her face. And I'm like, I wonder if there's something I could study out for, how not to be an Eve wife. Is there more to this than just that thought? And I started studying on it. And this is kind of what I've come up with. I wrote it out. Okay, so Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. I've got my Bible laid out here. So sorry if it's a little bit too close on my face. But it says, "And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat." I'm like, she saw it. She walked by sight and not by faith. And, we're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to walk by faith and not by sight. So that was one thing not going for. She was taken in her desires. She gave in to her desires, and, that's not good. She put the temptation before her husband. So, yeah, that's what I was mostly getting out of it, but there's that. And one thing that really stood out to me is it was saying that he was with her. And, I could be wrong, but I'm like, is it just saying that he was with her when she gave it to him, or he was with her when the whole thing was happening and didn't say anything? I don't know. But yeah, that's more for me to study out. And then in Genesis chapter 3, verse 12, it says, "And the man said, The woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat." She makes her husband ashamed. He was having to put blame on someone else because he was so ashamed in the presence of the Lord. And, in Proverbs, it talks about how a virtuous woman will have a husband who can trust in her, and he won't be able to be spoiled. There's no need of him to spoil. He won't become rotten. I don't remember exactly where in Proverbs, but it does say somewhere in Proverbs that a virtuous woman is, good to her husband, it's healthy for her husband, but a bad one will be rottenness in her husband's bones. I don't know about you, but I don't want to make my husband's bones rot, spiritually, of course, but or otherwise. I don't know how I could otherwise, but you know what I mean. So he made her ashamed, and we don't want to make our husbands ashamed. We don't want to make him feel shame. And, even though, it's on him, he's got to be held responsible for his actions too. We're only held accountable for ourselves. And when we go and check our accountability on what we've done, what we haven't done, we don't want to say, I made my husband ashamed of himself. I was the cause of that shame. He couldn't go before the Lord blameless in this area because of me. I put that before him. If I wouldn't have even touched it, he wouldn't probably have even went there. So that's pretty serious. That feels pretty serious. And then Genesis 3:13, and the Lord God said unto the woman, what is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. She wasn't really taking responsibility for her actions. She was like, the serpent beguiled me. I was tricked. So she should have been a little more wise and just listened and had faith. And, she probably should have just kind of accepted what she done and been like, hey, I done this. It was bad. So I feel like there was a lot to not being an Eve wife. And then from Genesis 3, verse 14 down, it tells about how the curse began. And, we as wives, I don't really know what all her role as a helpmeet was, because women were created to be the helpmeet of their husband. I don't really know what that looked like before the garden. But sorry, my 5-year-old was pushing the 1-year-old in the cozy coop, and it looked like her feet was being dragged. I was just making sure they weren't being dragged, but and they weren't, so she's good. But I wonder what it was like being that helpmeet. How much easier it probably was before the curse, and the fall of man. Because after this curse, the role of being a helpmeet changes so much, because our husbands have more of a burden now than what they did in the garden. So, we're not just a companion. We have a lot of work to do now. Personally, I count it as a blessing to be my husband's helpmeet. It's an honor for me to get to help him. And I try really hard not to take that job lightly. It's very serious. So, she didn't do right. She didn't listen. And it seems like to me there's 3 D's and a triangle. At the top of that is desire. We are all going to feel desires for things, whether they be good or bad. Most of the time it seems like they're bad because we are carnal, we are human. But there's 2 roads coming off of that desire, either discipline or destruction. And I don't mean discipline like, I'm going to discipline you, like go spanking. But when I mean disciplining ourselves to say no. Disciplining ourselves to choose what is healthy for ourselves. I heard it said the other day, disciplining yourself has to start with loving yourself. You have to love yourself enough to discipline yourself to choose what's good for you, what's not good for you, and what's going to help you to reach your goals. And so, if her goal was to stay in the Garden of Eden and stay and go with Christ, then, that would have been the road to go, but she didn't go that way. She went the other way, where she gave into her desires. And so we have desire, which all of us have, and then 2 roads. And one was discipline, and the other one is destruction. And that's the road she went down. And, in that destruction, her husband was kicked out of the Garden of Eden. He wasn't able to walk before the Lord blameless. He had to go before him in shame. And now he has to have the burden of working and providing. I didn't really realize, sorry, a text message pop up, I wanted to get that out of my way. But he did, blah, 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 sorry. I don't think I fully realized the burden that a man feels for providing until, me and my husband really started talking about his stresses one day. It is really hard and stressful for a man to provide. They feel such a responsibility and such a burden, and they, can even take on worry and just so much stress. And honestly, knowing that my husband feels that strongly toward just making sure we're okay, I think it makes me love him even more, because I'm like, wow, you really feel that for us and for me, and yeah, just feels good just to love him that much more. But that's a burden for him. And for her children, I don't really know if it was God's plan for them to have children in the Garden of Eden or not, but now her children have to know what sin is. They have to experience sin from their first breath and have to take on a battle between good and evil and right and wrong, and learning all these things that were probably so much easier just to take on naturally then. And have to face the potential ending of going to hell. And imagine it being on your shoulders and it being on your head that you were the person that created that for your child. Wow, what a curse. What just destruction. Like, it's just bad. And before, God made the provision. He provided. And no one knew sin. They only knew the way of the Lord, and it wasn't difficult. And now her destruction in this is she is forced to live a life to her husband, to the authority of her husband. Okay, sorry for that little pause. My kids started fighting over the car. But now she has destruction as well. Not just her husband, not just her children, but the burden of what she done is on her head, for her husband, for her children. But also, that would be a lot to have to think on. That would be a curse in itself, to have to live with that guilt. But with that, now she's forced to live under subjection to her husband, under his authority, and, have to submit to him. And that, in times, is hard. It's hard to learn how to do that in a biblical, Christian kind of way. It's hard. We're carnal. We don't want to have to listen to anybody, but we do. We have to. And, now also she's forced to live a really long life, having a lot of babies. I don't know about you, but I've had 3 kids, and my pregnancies were not as hard as some. Okay, sorry for the pause again. I had a kid wanting a drink. You would think them going outside, they'd be happy. But anyway, so yeah, my pregnancies weren't as hard as some people's I know have it. But I mean, it wasn't comfortable, and it wasn't always an enjoyable experience, from morning sickness to then getting super, super big, and, being kicked in the ribs, and then having to go through labor and all this and that and recovery. Pregnancy's not easy. And, it goes on and says that Adam lived to be 950 years old. She starts off with having Cain and Abel, and then it said that when Adam turned 130 years old, they had Seth. Have no idea how many kids they potentially had in between that time, but it says that he lived 800 years after Seth, and Adam begat sons and daughters. And in chapters 4 and 5 of Genesis, it's just like begat, and tells all these people and people getting married and everything, and I'm like, that's a lot of years to be having a lot of kids. And that would be really rough. So, that was part of her destruction. That was part of the fall, and part of her curse. But, yeah, it was a big mess. So, I'm like, I don't want to be an Eve wife. trying to hit on some of the, highlighted points of that. Walk by faith, not by sight. Don't look at something and be like, because if the Lord said no, just say no. It doesn't matter if it's pleasant to your eyes. It doesn't matter if you desire it. Just say no. Don't put temptation in front of your husband. If you love him, don't put it in front of his face. No matter what it is, even if he's on a diet and he just don't want that slice of pizza, but he really wants that slice of pizza, just don't bring pizza in the house. Just, go do it on your lunch, your special lunchtime or something. When he's not around, don't put it in front of him. We need to try super hard not to make our husbands ashamed, whether it's in his social circles, at work, or, before the Lord. And, he needs to be able to trust in us. Do what you have to do so your husband can trust in you. And, because it's gonna start with desire. Either way. So love yourself enough, love your husband enough, love your Lord enough to choose to discipline. Say no. Discipline. You can do it. Just say no. And, so we got desire, discipline, or destruction. And her destruction was pretty big. So how big is your destruction going to be? So let's choose to make a big discipline for ourselves and not be an Eve wife. All right, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Sorry for how choppy it's been. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.